Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the new era of Thomas the Frank engine. The Tottenham Hotspur train is pulling into the station. Please stand clear of the doors as they open. All aboard. Woo! Woo!
on the towards the choo choo train, right? Fantastic,
Come
fantastic.
aboard, come aboard, get on board right now. Taking us straight to the top four, taking us straight to an FA Cup or a League Cup and a Super Cup to start it off with. What else can you
I
ask
mean,
for?
you couldn't ask for more coaching. I mean, the reality is that look, guys, if you're here for the first time, this is Come On Ye Spurs TV, the Afrobeat nation of Tottenham world, if you like, and if you're here for the first time, express yourself by subscribing or support us by subscribing. Leave your comments in the comment section below. Share this with the people, and of course, yes, let's hear from you. Like as well for the algorithm, so that we keep getting stuff fed to you, and of course helps us to grow the channel as well and get the message across to as many people as possible. Thank you and welcome. A new era, new manager. Uh, the king is dead. Long live the king, eh? So
Long live
Thomas,
the king.
yeah, uh, Thomas has been appointed. Uh, sorry, Thomas Frank has been appointed. So yes, we have a new manager in the house. He hasn't granted any media, excuse me, interviews as yet. So it's a little bit difficult to get into his mind and see what he has planned for Tottenham. But of course, if the history is anything to go by, given the fact that he's worked with Brentford and has kept them Premier League and made them what you might call a stable force in the league, and obviously they've beaten a lot of the top teams in the league at different points in time. And one statistic I kind of latched onto was how often went to Stamford Hill and won there. So that's something that a record that I would hope that he would take with bring from Brentford and take us whenever we go and visit Chelsea, because that has been just an abysmal historical thing for us. Now, I mean, for those who have recent, when I say recent Tottenham history, I'm talking maybe the last 30 years or so. We know that we haven't been um, what's the word, Stamford Hill and won that many times. If at all, probably one or two or three times maximum in that time frame. And most times we actually lose, and the odd draw. Most of the time they actually end up. So yeah, and not a great what's the word, record there. But one area where we've done very well recently is against Man United. So it's like kind of turned that historical thing of not winning against Sir Alex's team, as we knew them back then. We went there for almost 23, 25 years and not won once. We only won. First time we won was in 2013, and it's last year. Can you believe that? So yeah, it's a huge turnaround. They haven't beaten us since 2021, I think, if I recall. So that's crazy to think of that. Man, you haven't beaten us in that time. But hey, new era. Come, yes, let's look at Mr. Franks. What do you reckon, Schumann?
Well, I think he's another breath of fresh air. We already had fresh air in Ange Postecoglou. In my opinion, he's another one. Um, they are not as dissimilar, I think, as people think. One or two tweaks differently, but people, I think, have this wrong assumption of Thomas Frank. They think of him because of how Brentford has played in the last couple of seasons. They think Thomas Frank is pragmatic, slightly defensive, but I think different. I think there's an attacking manager trapped inside Thomas Frank, and it's only a matter of time uh, until he would have gotten hold of a bigger team and then began to espouse his true values. And I think Tottenham is that team. I think Tottenham Hotspur is that team for him, and I think he will grasp the challenge by the scruff of the neck. Um, he knows that he is following a very successful manager. In fact, someone reminded me yesterday that the last manager to succeed um, a cup winning manager at Tottenham was Harry Redknapp. and we all know how much we enjoyed the Harry Redknapp ride. And so now here we have the Frank Engine ride. I think it's worth something, don't you think?
Well, Chuma, I'm going to have to let you um, do something for me, even though people can't see me for now, right? Just tell me, just in two well, in one sentence, um, Thomas Frank be an improvement on Ange.
Yes, I think it will be an improvement on Ange. And
In what way?
okay, Ange Postecoglou was very front foot. Thomas Frank can be front foot as well. He did that with Brentford in the Championship. That's in recent history that I know of. He did that with thing. Even when he was at Brøndby in Denmark, they played very, very well as well. Front foot football. But where they differ is something I was calling for on this podcast for ages, which is Ange should get hold of midfield. His midfield was very porous because they were very flexible, they were very attacking. There's nothing wrong with holding a high line. You know, quite a few clubs have a high line, but as soon as your midfield is bypassed, your team gets into trouble. And that was my huge thing when Ange was midfield was, trying to play a single defensive midfielder or a six, as people like to call them. I felt we didn't have that kind of player to control, recycle the ball, win back possession. And you're thinking of a Busquets, Barcelona history. You're looking at a Rodri at Man City. Tottenham Hotspur did not have that. We have Bentancur, Rodrigo Bentancur, and we have Yves Bissouma. Both of them cannot play, in my opinion, cannot play as single defensive midfield players. They are very good in a tandem, but Ange never really played them in that double pivot to block. His midfield was one that kept him strictly on the front foot, pressing, pressing, pressing. And in my opinion, once you have midfield control in the Premier League, your team will do well. You can only look at Liverpool and the emergence of Ryan Gravenberch, Alexis McAllister, how the two of them work together to keep Liverpool very stable. They have Endo, the Japanese player, coming in as a substitute as well. Very solid defensive midfield, always playing to um, on a slot, and it paid off. And I didn't
Both side.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't think that Tottenham's squad was that bad that we couldn't play two. I just felt for whatever reason, Ange's structure just didn't work. And should it have been given time? I think with more experienced players, which is what he called for at the end of his at his last press conference after the Europa League win, where he said we're now going to move for more experience, and I don't mean age. I thought that was actually a good thing, but that was something he should have pressed for, in my opinion, the season before, because buying Archie Gray, who is potential, was a very brilliant thing. Um, Ironically, Thomas Frank was also looking to buy Archie Gray as well. So that tells you he is a good player, and he was going to play him in midfield. The difference is Thomas Frank deploys his midfield in a different way, and I felt that was the thing. Beyond that, they're quite similar guys, and then of course Thomas Frank has the added advantage of quote unquote the Plan B. We've been hearing Plan B since Pochettino days. We've even heard it from Harry Redknapp days, to be honest.
Well, so I mean, of course, without sort of trying to rewrite history, and you hear because when folks try to paint the picture of a coach, they paint the picture of a coach in a specific way, i.e., he plays high line, he has no plan B, and all of that. But the matter is that you actually see a lot of teams play the high line as well, but they don't get the same sort of criticism that we get because they don't end up losing matches. And of course that's history. But let's just look at Thomas Frank in a teams. I mean, the only thing we know he's that we're familiar with, if you like, is probably Brentford, right? And players he's got there and how he's got them to play in his own way. Now, will he, given the fact that he's got better players in quotes, right, in Tottenham, right, then enable that team that came from 17th last season to be challenging for the trophy this year for the title this season. Do you think that's a possibility, or as putting too much pressure on him early doors?
Well, I think he took Brentford from 17th to either 10th or 9th in the space of a year. I think after they arrived in the Premier League, they finished. I think yeah, someone out there correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they finished like 16th or 17th at the first season, and then they vaulted to 9th. Then they dropped down again to like 12th. So I think it's very possible. Tottenham have to make up 30 points. That's 10 matches. They have to win 10 matches to make up 30 points we would have that would have kept us in the European places. So, is it impossible for Tottenham to win 10 extra matches next season? I think it's very possible. And that would mean winning 10 matches and only losing 12 games. I think it's very possible for Tottenham to go a season losing only 12 games and winning an extra 10. Um, the issue we have is, like you pointed out off air, is that we have Champions League football. How will Thomas Frank cope with 2 games in a week? And the point I made to you, which I'm reiterating now, is well, when you have a better squad than what you had, you can play two games in a week. Um, I don't know if I think Tottenham's injury hoodoo, I think it's over now. I heard they're overhauling the medical team, even though I think it was a combination of bad luck, training methods, or utilization on the pitch in terms of how hard we pressed. And, like I said, hard luck that and just probably poor recovery work by the medical team. So I think it's a combination of all three. People said, is it Ange? Is it the medical team? Is it bad luck? I think all three things played a part in the horrendous injury problems last year. And if we're over that now, I think, yeah, 2 games a week, 3 games a week, whatever it's going to be, I think. And also because we're not going to be, if he's going to adapt the team, I don't think we're going to play one way all the time. I think we're going to play different ways for different matches.
Yeah, I mean, and then again, this whole Ange one way thing, I don't really subscribe to it. When we had to do what we had to do, I mean, obviously altered the style as well. So, and journalists claiming that he did it because them is absolute balderdash in my view. But hey,
No, no, yeah, no, but so in terms of that, I agree. He altered the style when we played Man City and beat them because we were a counter-attacking team. But there was a certain way we went after the ball that we didn't do afterwards, and that I think was the thing. I think that came down to the quality of players that were available.
yeah, and
Um,
all the question of injuries and a lot of things that people sort of
yeah,
feel.
yeah, because we did the same against, like, every time we played a team that was going to be more ball dominant or have more or have higher possession stats than Spurs. He calmed them down and said, "Look, we'll just hit them, get the ball, pass it out, and then hit them." And we did that against like a Villa. We did that against a West Ham. We clocked up 3-4 goals in those kind of games where the so-called opposition had more possession. And Thomas Frank coming into that, he I think would do similar. Like I said, my only difference is I don't know, for whatever reason, there's someone on our WhatsApp group. Shout out to him now, Zoba, who is on the group. He asked me once for one of his favorite games. It was the 2017 2018 first leg match against Juventus. Now I've downloaded a lot of Spurs matches over the years. I have like hard drives full of Spurs matches, and I didn't have that game. And I was like, I need to find out. So I found a way, and I found, for whatever reason, it just came to my mind the other day, and I went online, and now with more resources online, I found
Yeah,
a place where you could watch old matches, and I just told him, look, that game's there, and I watched the game, and I was so intrigued at how much control Spurs had. Had a midfield of, it was Dembele and Eric Dyer. You had Dele, you had Ericsson, and you had Lamella. Son was on the bench.
wow.
And we completely controlled Juventus. It was like, and watching, 1-2 passes, I was like, this is the template for the Spurs I loved. And with Ange, I saw that as well. But there's a certain control. Watching Musa Dembele, honestly, I think, listening to podcasts of ex-players saying they don't understand how, no disrespect to Spurs, that guy shouldn't have stayed at Spurs. That guy should have been at Real Madrid. It's not a lie. And he played in a Legends game. This it was just like rewinding the clock. The guy
Okay.
hasn't put on weight.
See that.
He just bossed a midfield, and I said, "This is it. It's not about your midfielders running into the box and all that stuff." And which is what I saw with Ange. And I'm not complaining about that per se, but it's like it's about a certain level of grit and control. You have to let the opposition know that we're going to bully you, and then we'll allow our finesse players. What I saw Ericsson doing, Madison can do. Madison has done, in fact, in my opinion. But the problem is those two midfielders. And here's the thing: I think Rodrigo Bentancur is going to sign an extension to his contract, and I think people will see a return of what they saw in his first two seasons under Antonio Conte. That Bentancur, people say he's gone. No, he's not gone. What he's been asked to do for Ange was sort of outside of his comfort zone or his skill zone. Because when I watch him play for Uruguay under Bielsa, he comes back to doing exactly what he was doing in first season. So I'm like, there's a disconnect here. And I understand Ange has his philosophy. And he tried very, very hard to play Ange's philosophy, but it wasn't natural to him. I think under Frank, if I judge Frank rightly, I believe Frank is just going to keep two guys to just even Sa as well. Pape Matissa, if you remember when he played under Conte, he was more a defensive. He reminded you so much of like a Vieira, or a Yaya before Yaya even started going forward. And somewhere along the line, he's lost that. He still has that drive, but he doesn't have the control. And I think all of that is just there are little tweaks here and there. I really expected it, and maybe that could have been season three. So in other words as well, and said season three is better than season two. It could be true, but it's also true the second part where he said, and the main character could get killed off, but season three will still be better. So I count this as season three, and it still be better.
Let's very much hope so. We'd love to hear from you at home. What you think? Thomas Frank, the right manager for Tottenham, take them to the next level, or is he gonna flounder, or it's just gonna be like a mid, I mean, sort of mid-table mediocrity restore, that sort of thing, if you want to call it that. So, but we'd love to hear from you. What are your thoughts are on this particular point? Now, in terms of a, I know we say that he's adaptive. He can play three at the back. He can play five at the, I mean, five at the back. I'm sorry, three at the back, four at the back. Play wingers actually don't play like they used to play in Tottenham. It's more they actually come in more. The Mbueno, the who come in. And I know he lost Ivan Tony at some point, and obviously that had a bit of an impact on their quality of their play for a short while. But he managed to keep them in the game very much in the same way that Ange kept Tottenham competitive when Hurricane left. So yeah, I mean, it's how do you think he will set up? B, which of the players we have now do you think he will retain, and which one would he let go? Let's just have a quick look at those.
I think, well, the rumors are that Christian Romero is looking to leave. Um, Not necessarily because Spurs are a bad team, but Christian Romero is probably top five central defenders in the world at the moment, rated or ranked. He's top five. Some people say not. I believe he is. And his medal haul is showing you everything: Copa America, World Cup, now Europa League as well. He's a class act. He's a hell of a player. And his head, I think, has been turned to Spain for the last year. So if he goes, there are quite a few options to replace him. That rumored options. One of whom is a player who plays for Brentford, Nathan Collins, who's played an Irishman who's played under Thomas Frank, who ironically, like I think I mentioned in the last one, Spurs were after him when he was at Burnley before he made his big move to Wolves, and then from Wolves he moved to Brentford. So he's a very good player. He looks like someone that they would like to add. At the same time, we already have Kevin Danto, who's been made permanent as well. In terms of who he might let go in midfield, I think Yves Bissouma might be let go. I think Sarr fits what Thomas Frank does. I think Bentancur fits it as well. I think Bergval is going to be an amazing player. He's someone that Thomas Frank, I think, and Thomas Frank, of course, being Scandinavian himself, I think he will have an affinity to the Scandinavian players like Berval and Kulusevski. He would want them to be his main men in a weird way up front, and then two players he tried to buy. Go
Now,
ahead.
this little bit of a let me interrupt you. A bit of
Go ahead.
I call it breaking statement from Don Levy, as we call him. You know, it says, look, the outpouring of emotion with the parade was just incredible. Right, we've won a European trophy, but it isn't enough. What we haven't done is more important. You know, we need to win the Premier League, want to win the Champions League. Now, we need to win the Premier League and we want to win the Champions League. Now, is Thomas Frank the manager to help us do that? And do we have the setup to enable us to do that where we are now? That's
No,
okay.
no, and in fact, I think it is downright despicable for Daniel Levy. With all due respect to you, sir, Daniel Levy, Mr. Levy, I think it is downright despicable for you to come out and make a statement like you need to win the Premier League and you want to win the Champions League when you haven't, and I repeat, haven't provided any of your managers with their specific requirements. You have never ever met the requirements that these guys have set out for you to set up squads to do exactly what you wish. Tottenham are punching above their weight, have been punching above their weight for the last decade. And business wise, I think you're a brilliant man and you set us up financially to make us financially secure, enough to pay off our debts and to still thrive. But it's not to thrive in any way to compete for that title. You're looking at what Liverpool have done. You're looking at what Man City have bought damn near 7 players since the season ended. You're looking at Liverpool. Liverpool have made 2 or 3 statements, and he has the nerve, the gall. I'm sorry, no, that's offensive to me. It's an offensive statement, and it's something that already puts so much pressure on Thomas Frank for no apparent reason. Thomas Frank at best can get, I believe he can get us top 4. I would love it if he could break into the top 3 or challenge with the squad, but we don't even know what kind of squad we are going to have. But based on the squad we have right now, at best I can think of is a top 4. That's it.
You know, I've always been a fan of Mr. Levy, right? And when anyone says Levy out, Inic out, and I always say to people, if we look at things the cold light of day, right? And by cold light of day, you have to look at everything from a contextual perspective, not necessarily fans' perspective alone. He has that real huge responsibility, like in that everything falls on him. If we win, it's either in spite of Levy, right? Because it's not him, right? He's not involved in making the stadium, giving us the money, giving us all of the things that are requisite to make our team win, if you want to call it that, right? If we lose, it's because he hasn't spent money. So it's almost like a no-win situation for him from a management perspective. Now, again, every football team does this. Every fan base does this comparison thing. Look at what your rivals are doing, look at what they're doing. But what they also fail to appreciate is the fact that, look, some people say that. They give some people giving some ridiculous examples like last season that say, oh, Aston Villa spends about 96% of their earnings on wages, right? And I'm thinking to myself, how sustainable is that from a practical perspective? You know, how sustainable is that? Now they can't do that this season because they didn't qualify for Champions League. Now, imagine that we did that and we didn't qualify for Champions League. It would be absolute disaster. You know, so there is risk mitigation in any football thing. At the end of the day, like we found out now, I know a lot of people, what you might call, I don't want to use the word trophy hunters in that sense, because at the end of the day, it's about winning, you know. And I guess there's entertainment while you're winning as well. But you have to ask yourself, right? Do you go into a game to be entertained alone, or do you want to be entertained and win at the same time? Now, for me, I want us to win, right? Whether entertained or not, but I would rather be entertained. Does that make sense? In the process
No, I agree.
of trying to win.
Yeah.
Now, that's the first point. The second point is that, look, ultimately, we have a a budget to work with, right? Uh, how that budget is set, who sets it, and all that sort of thing. Obviously, that's a club matter, But at the end of the day, we still have debts as well. We're probably owing the most money in the Premier League. I mean, in terms of infrastructure, rather than on player things as well. So, and those things don't go away in 5 days or 5 years, right? It's over a 30-year period, And we're what? We're in year six of that. Sorry, maybe year seven or so now of that repayment journey. So we're still early days. And if you consider that in these early days of how we're progressing, if you want to call it a project, right? We've been in how many finals in that time frame? How many teams can boast of being in the number of finals that we have been in, right? How many teams can boast of the number of semi-finals we've been in that time? How many teams can boast of even winning a trophy? Yeah, I know that we won one now in 17 years, but we're one of 22 teams in the Premier League, right? And every fan club also always acts as if they have the divine right to win trophy. The truth of the matter is that it doesn't really work like that. You know, the ones that have the most money eventually always top up, and we've never been taught that league in that respect. There's a question between earnings, right, as in revenue that comes in, and what your debt profile looks like. So you've got to sort of have a balance between managing risk and ensuring that you provide at least tangible resources that you can sort of use. And I don't think we're that bad in quotes, if you like. I mean, okay, fine. I mean, there are areas where we could have improved, and but what you find is in the press is that I mean, as you saying last year when Ange confounded everyone, if you want to call it that, right? But narrative about Tottenham in the press has always been negative as far as I can remember. You always come up with, oh, we're going after this player, going after that player, and we don't get them. You don't know how far any of those things are true. You know what I'm saying? A lot of it is speculation, a lot of it is ITK, and you find that at the end of the day, I mean, we kind of create or find players, if you like, that fit what can afford to pay for on a sustainable basis on the long run. And it's just the reality. We don't have a sugar daddy or like the Qataris or the Emiratis who are providing money for City, and neither do we have Liverpool's sort of not only money and pedigree as well. So it's a mix of things. Now a lot of players will leave us and go to Man United, for instance, who probably haven't done so well in the last 100 years because probably one of the richest club in the world. But at the moment, they're in trouble. So it's I mean, I don't know. Be careful what you wish for. That's all I'll just say.
I've heard what you said, and I'll retort to your first point. My retort to this is this: nobody said he hasn't spent money. He's obviously spent like £600 million in transfers. The issue, Optimus, is not spending money. The issue is buying who.
Who is
No,
better?
I mean, if you're in Lagos, if you gave money to someone in the house and told him to go shopping for you, and you're expecting food, and the guy now buys like 10 packets of Snickers bars, and you're like, where is the food? And he said, but this is food, Oga. Here you go. Snickers bars. Snickers bars are food. You can live on Snickers bars. But it's not it's not pounded yam, it's
That's
not
not
soup.
the right analogy. Come on. That's
No,
not.
it is because we've lived through a system where we all know this. This isn't like even just rumors. Mauricio Pochettino wanted Bruno Fernandes. We talked to Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes was moving to Tottenham. Daniel Levy decided to play silly games with Sporting Lisbon. And Sporting Lisbon told him where to carry himself and his suitcase to. Manchester United came and dusted it off. This has been happening for 2 decades. Certain players would want to come to Spurs. Sadio Mane, pictures of him walking around Hotspur Way. Come on. Mauricio Pochettino had Sadio Mane. Once again, Daniel Levy plays. So it's not a question of spending money or comparing him. No, 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 no. Even saying Villa have spent more on wages. No. Villa have gotten Unai Emery who he wants. He wants Marco Asensio in January. They go and get Marco Asensio. He wants this guy. Villa get him that guy. Yes, Villa have gotten in trouble financially because of that. But these are type specific. You know what I'm saying? It's type specific. It's not your chairman going, well, you know what? Rather than get you Bruno, I'll get you Lo Celso. And I can string up some kind of deal with. And Lo Celso is a fine player, don't get me wrong. But he wasn't what the manager asked for. But it was something used. And then because of that, you can't play exactly what you want to play. Your vision of and that's all he's done to us for 2 decades. And don't get me wrong, like I said, sometimes it works. Sometimes you have some very, very good players who've emerged from this. But all in all, he hasn't. And when you say, well, we can't afford to do this and that, I agree. If that's the case, and I do agree with you that we can't go out and buy these players, we don't have a sugar daddy. Then if you don't have a sugar daddy, then your chairman should not have sugar daddy needs and wants. He has a sugar daddy need and wants to win league. No, 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 no. Winning the league is what the Qatari guys or the Abu Dhabis can tell their manager, I want the league. And they mean that. If you haven't done what those guys are doing, I'm sorry, someone tells you, oh, my son, I want you to do this. Your dad is not paying anything. You're not giving you any money to go to school. Yet he expects you to emerge with this. You're not eating 3 meals a day like some other kids you're competing with. You can always push above your weight. Don't get me wrong. But all in all, the person who is well fed, who is sleeping better than you, who is getting driven to school, that guy already has the advantage over you. I'm not saying you can't beat him, but it's going to be very hard and very difficult and challenging to do so. And that's the problem with Daniel Levy, and that's the whole problem with Enoch.
Welcome, Thomas Frank, to Tottenham Hotspur. Then.
This is exactly. This is what it worked. That's why I said I'm giving him top 4, top 6. Brings us back there. If he can move a League Cup, FA Cup, this Super Cup as well. If he can get this Super Cup, like I said, that already. If he gets the Super Cup, he doesn't even need to win the League or FA Cup.
Let's close on this, for instance, right? So let's say this is the last thing we're talking about on this topic of Thomas Frank, and we're coming here, right? Now, if he wins the, why don't we do this? Let me do it in my optimus way, right? When he wins the when he wins the Super Cup, right? I think that would give him what I call credit in the bank in the way that guys up the road have held on to their manager for the last 5 years, and will give him some sort of stability to be able to build on going forward.
Yeah, I don't even think to change the analogy. It's not even petrol or diesel. It's nuclear fuel. It can break that. The fuel can break through the stratosphere and atmosphere and go out. That's what you will get. That will completely solidify him for 2-3 years, winning that Super Cup. When he wins that, it just instantly gives him complete control of that squad. It installs him as a winner. It makes those players go, wow, we've already won with this guy. This is our second win in 6 months. We are winners. We're now winners. The winning mentality has come to Spurs. Some people argue that it hasn't, but another win now confirms it. Like what the biblically speaking, out of the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, the first person says you're this, second person says you're a winner.
This is it.
You're obviously a winner.
Yeah. So
welcome, Thomas Frank.
I'd love to hear from you. What do you think? I mean, Thomas Frank, is he the man for take Tottenham forward for next level, or given what Mr. Levy just declared based on what we just sort of heard just now, that Tottenham is going to be able to compete across all competitions? Say your thoughts, and would love to hear from you. In the meantime, come on, ye Spurs!
Choo choo!